Hi, welcome to my craft corner. I'm Heidi with Onigo Stamping. Today I'm really excited to share with you a very basic, simple card, but I'm going to show it to you top to bottom. I'm going to show you all of the cutting, how to put it all together, how to stamp it, and I'm going to be using my Stamparatus to show you some step stamping too. So quick, easy, fun card to make. I can't wait to share it. But first, if you don't already have a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, I would love to be your demonstrator. I'd love to help you figure out what you need to get started, answer your questions, maybe even host an event for you. If you would like that, please go ahead and leave me a comment or send me an email, and I will get back to you as soon as I can to figure out how I can help you. All of the dimensions for today's card, as well as additional photos, can be found on my website, and you'll find the link to that in the description to the video. You'll also find a link to the supply list that you can shop directly from. All right, Onigo, let's get stamping. Normally when I share a card with you, I've already done a lot of the cutting just to save some time. But today, because I'm doing a quick and easy card, I wanted to go over cutting with you and how to use the paper trimmer. So I have the paper I need, some Whisper White, Melon Mambo, and Coastal Cabana. I'm going to start with the Coastal Cabana because this is going to make our card base. With the paper trimmer, you just flip open the arm, and you'll see along the top there are the numbers, the measurements. At the very top there's the centimeter measurements. But if you're in the US, you want the imperial measurements that are right below that, and you go over to 5.5, line up your cardstock on that 5.5 line, and then I know that this doesn't all get in my shot here, but there's two cutting blades. I'm trying to see, do those show up? Let me push this out just a little bit. So there's two cutting blades. There's a dark gray cutting blade and a lighter gray cutting blade. The dark gray is your cut blade, and actually the lighter gray one is a scoring blade. So I'm gonna push that aside for a second. And I'm just going to cut my piece of Coastal Cabana cardstock in half. So since it is 11 inches, that's 5.5. I'm gonna cut it at 5.5. And now, because this is my card base, I actually want to I want to score this at 4.25. So now I'm going to use that scoring blade, the lighter gray scoring blade, and I'm just going to push that up. I've lined that up at 4.25, and now I have a nice scored edge in there, so I can fold it. So I'll set that aside. My white cardstock is going to be the front, and for this card, I want my front piece to be 3.75 by 5 inches. So I'm going to start by cutting 5 inches across the top. The other thing that I want for this card is I want some 1/2-inch strips of Whisper White cardstock. So I'm actually going to cut off 2 1/2-inch strips first. And to do that, you'll notice on the right-hand side of my cutting blade, there's also numbers. It goes up to about 1.5, which makes it really nice for making some of these skinnier cuts. So I'm just going to line that up with the 1/2-inch mark right here on the right. And then I'm going to slice off a 1/2-inch strip of Whisper White cardstock. And I'm going to do that again. I'm going to slice off a second one, line it up to the 1/2-inch. Don't look at these numbers. That's the metric numbers. You want these ones underneath the 1/2-inch. So you see it goes 1/4, 1/2, 3/4, 1 inch. So line that up to the 1/2-inch and slice that off. Now I'm going to cut this into 2 pieces, and they are each going to be 3.75. There's one. And then this one should be 3.75. It's a little bit extra, so I'm just going to slice off that tiny little bit and throw that out. So now I have 2 pieces of 3.75 by 5-inch Whisper White cardstock and 2 strips that are 5 inches by 1/2 inch. Okay, so set those aside, and now I want to make a layer of Melon Mambo. My favorite layer is a 3/16 inch layer. That means that it's going to be 3/16 inch bigger when I cut it. So you remember I cut the Whisper White at 5 inches. I'm going to cut this one, the Melon Mambo, at 5 3/16 inches. Just like that. And now I'm going to cut this. I'm going to turn it the other way. And before it was 3.75, so I'm going to add 3/16 to that, which is just 1/16 less than 4 inches, or 3 15/16. And I'm going to cut 2 of these. And what I'm left with is a piece that is a little bit more than 1/2 inch, but less than 3/4 inch. And it is going to fit that strip that I made perfectly. So you won't quite get 4 of those out of your piece of Melon Mambo like you will out of the Whisper White. The Whisper White, you should have even more than 4 of those strips that you can get out of it. But you should get 3 of those out of one piece of Melon Mambo cardstock. So if you're making a lot of cards, which this is going to be a birthday card that I want to make a number of, it's really helpful to be able to use those tiny little strips and not throw anything away and kind of plan for that. So that's all the cutting. I'm going to put my paper trimmer away. And for this card, I'm going to be using my Stamparatus. So I want to pull out my Stamparatus for you. This is my Stamparatus. You'll see it has 2 plates that come out. And then I have a pad of grid paper. And I've already torn this off, but I have a pad of grid paper. I'm just going to set that aside. This is really nice to have just for lining your stuff up, so you don't have to put it all the way in the corner. It also is helpful if your stamp goes over the edge of your cardstock. It's going to pick up that extra ink, so it keeps your foam pad nice. So you have this foam pad. Underneath there is another plate. So if you were using the red rubber stamps, you would want to take the foam pad off because those are a little bit thicker. But because I'm using the photopolymer stamps today, I am going to use that foam pad. So I'm just going to set that right in there. I'm actually going to turn this so that I'll have a cutting plate on the right and a cutting plate up above. And I realize this does not fit my screen very well, but I'm going to do the best I can. I'm going to just put my grid paper in there and slide it all the way over to the corner. For my card, I'm using the Pattern Play stamp set, which is just a really fun stamp set that has all these different patterns in it. And we're going to be doing what is called step stamping. So I'm going to pull out my stamps. This is what the stamps look like when they come. They're on this sheet. And I want to start with this long strip of stripes. So I'm just going to pull that off. I'm going to grab one of those Whisper White pieces of cardstock that I got, that we just cut. And I'm just going to line this up so it's straight, just because it wouldn't have to be straight, but it would have to be straight actually, if I want the stripes to be straight down my piece of paper. So I'm going to line that up, and then I'm going to lay my stamp on top of here and try to get my stamp straight. I'm going to take one of my cutting plates and I'm going to slide it in the side. So you have to hold it straight up and down when it goes in. If it turns, it's stuck in there. And then I'm going to push it down and push down on the top, and that will pick up that stamp. I'm going to hold on to the Whisper White underneath just a little bit. There we go. And I think I have to put this back in place because it just wiggled. And that's why I like to use the grid paper, so that I make sure it's nice and straight. And if it does wiggle, I know how to get it right back in just the right spot. So wiggle that down. I'm going to be using 3 colors. I have Coastal Cabana, Bermuda Bay, and Granny Apple Green. I want to start with the Granny Apple Green. And I am just going to ink up that stamp. I'm going to try to move this over just a little bit so you can see. So I'm just inking this up right on my Stamparatus. And then I'm just going to close the Stamparatus and give it some nice pressure right all over the top and pick that back up, and you'll see those stripes are really nice on there. Now, if I want to, there's some little bits down there that aren't so nicely stamped. And this is one of the nice things about the Stamparatus is you can come back in and I can re-ink this up. And because it's in exactly the same spot, I can come in and just stamp that a second time. And now it went right back over that and gave you a much nicer stamp. This is also really good with some lighter color inks if you want them to be a little bit darker. The Stamparatus stamping twice like that can make it darker. So I just have a little chamois here. I'm going to wipe off my stamp so that I get that green ink off of there. Then I'm going to take the plate and I'm going to pull it off and I'm going to move it down 1. So it's in a slightly different position. I will now ink this with Bermuda Bay. And I will close my Stamparatus. And again, just applying some nice pressure on there so I get a nice stamp all the way across. I'm not going to worry too much about those little blips. I'm going to make sure my Stamparatus is cleaned off. I'm trying very hard not to get ink blobs where I don't want them. You do have to be careful that you make sure that you get this cleaned up each time and that you don't leave it wet or something. Most of this part of the Stamparatus shouldn't hit your paper when you're stamping, but you never know what's going to happen. So I'm going to move this down one more time, and I'm going to ink it with the Coastal Cabana. So again, just inking up the stamp well. And then I close, oops, you know what? I'm going to move down my magnet. You have to be very careful with these magnets. They are extremely, extremely magnetic. And there are 2 of them. I'll show you where they're stored afterwards. So they're stored underneath, and there's 2 of them. You can see that I've put some washi tape on my magnet. That is because if you try to pick this up and you don't pick it up right, or not so much when it's on the Stamparatus, but if your 2 magnets get stuck together, they will break. Okay, so they're so strong that they really stick together and they will break. You have to be very, very careful. So if I were doing multiple cards, I might go ahead and switch right now the paper. But actually first I'm going to come in and I am going to stamp another stamp on the top here. So I've got another plate, and you'll see that there's a spot to put the plates on both the top and one side. And this time I'm pulling off another stamp. I'm going to use this little stripe of little lines, I guess is what I'll call it. And I'm going to lay it on my paper. And again, just trying to line that up so it's straight. I'll close my Stamparatus. And now for this, I'm going to try to move this down just a little bit so you can see where that comes in. So now I'm inking this up with Melon Mambo. And I'll stamp it once. Now I'm going to pick this up and I'm moving it down 2 places. I'll re-ink it with some more Melon Mambo. And I'll line that right back up. I want to put in another line down here in between the Bermuda Bay and the Coastal Cabana lines, but I need to clean this off first because I'm actually going to lay the stamp down on my paper to get it positioned again. So I'm actually going to bring in my icky cloth here and just make sure that's nice and dry. Because if it was a little bit wet, it might leave a mark on my paper. So now, once again, I'm just laying down that stamp. I'm going to close my Stamparatus, picks up the stamp, and then ink that with the Melon Mambo. Close. Move this back down to the center. So that's moving 2. Ink it again. And close and open. And that is my background for my card. So I'm going to take this off and set this aside. This is going to be the background for the card. And now, if you remember, I stamped that little strip of Whisper white cardstock. And I want to stamp on this little white strip. What's really nice about the Stamparatus is that it makes it a lot easier to get these stamps nice and straight. Because so often you stamp it first and it's not straight and you try to cut it, or you stamp it after it's cut, and it's just very, very hard to get the stamp straight. With the Stamparatus, it really helps you get, because you can lay it on the paper first before you pick it up, and you know it's going to go right there. It's just a lot easier to get it straight with these greetings. So I'm just laying my stamp on there, hopefully nice and straight. I say that it's easier to get it straight, but that does not mean that you can't still make some little mistakes. So I'm laying that on there. I'm going to pick that up Oops, and it did not get clean, see? But it's okay, hopefully. I'm gonna ink that up with the Melon Mambo. And then just stamp it. And I'm gonna show you, so if I'm doing this a second time, I know right where I line that up on that grid paper. I'll just bring in my second little strip and lay that right on that grid paper again in the exact same spot. And I can ink up my stamp again and then stamp it. So it makes it really, really easy to stamp multiple cards at once. Really great for doing a whole bunch of cards. So I can't wait to make all these birthday cards that I'm going to be making later this afternoon. Just going to clean off my Stamparatus before I set it aside. So normally when you store your Stamparatus, you want to go ahead and take the plates out, because otherwise they will warp. And I would take the stamps off too, and I will do that. I'm going to come back to it, but I'm just going to set this aside for now. Close up my Melon Mambo ink pad. Remember, when you're closing the ink pad, you just want to pull on the end, pull it towards you, and then flip it over, right? Just like opening it. When they're closed, you find that finger hold right there. You pull up, flip it open, and then push it. And then when you want to close it, you find where you can hold on, pull it, and flip it. So let's finish off this card. So I have the Melon Mambo piece. I have the piece that I just stamped, and this should fit perfectly right in the center. I'm going to use my Stampin' Seal on this. So this is our new tape runner. If you're familiar with our snail adhesive that we used to have, you kind of want to hold the Stampin' Seal up a little bit straighter. So I want to hold that up in the air. You'll see I'm getting some snottiness, so I'm just going to come in here and make sure that that tape is centered and ready to go. And then I do still like to twist it before I pick it up. Just helps keep those snotty bits away. Because otherwise the tape like pulls out and it doesn't tear off nicely. I have the Coastal Cabana, and I started folding that, but I'm going to come back and I'm just going to give that a nice crease with my bone folder. And then I'm going to adhere again with my Stampin' Seal, quick and easy, and lay that on my card front, or on the card base, I should say. And now I'm going to add my greeting. So I have that greeting that I stamped, and I have the piece of Melon Mambo, again with my Stampin' Seal. So quick and easy to put this card together. And with the Stamparatus, it's so easy to make multiple cards too. It's really quite awesome. So I'm just adding my greeting to the front of my card, just like that. This is a really simple, clean and simple card. I do want to add just a couple of fun sequins. So I have the Artistry Bloom sequins. I've put them in one of our little tins that's in the mini catalog because they fit really perfect. And the container that they were in, I was just having trouble getting them in and out, so I put them in this container. I love it. So I grabbed some of these sequins. These are self-adhesive, which they're like my absolute favorite because they just stick. Just stick them down, they're stuck. So I'm just going to stick 3 of these on my card front. Just like that. Let's move this one just a little bit. There we go. So quick and easy card. Really fun to make. So I can't wait to make a bunch of these for all my friends and get them sent out. Thank you again for joining me today. Wasn't that an awesome, quick and easy card? Perfect to make a bunch of and have to hand out whenever there's a birthday. If you enjoyed today's video, please go ahead and subscribe to my channel, like this video, leave a comment, share with your friends. I really appreciate it. If you want any of the cutting dimensions, you'll find those on my website, and the link to that is in the description to the video. There's also a link directly to the supply list, and from the supply list, you can order any of the supplies that I used today. If you have any questions, leave a comment, send me an email, and I will be sure to get back to you. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.